Okay. All right, guys. Hello, everybody. We're happy to present to you our fully deployed full stack capstone project Cover2Cover. This web app seeks to connect people around the world with the art of storytelling about themselves. My name is Cameron Montague, and I currently work at a charter high school called Democracy Prep Charter High School as an operations tech associate. I'm also a student and full stack web developer, and will be starting a full-time internship with Citibank in the summer.
Hello, my name is Dante Flowers. I'm a computer hardware enthusiast and a web development fellow at Pursuit. I'm looking forward to the start of my future in tech.
And I'm Joanne, and I'm an aspiring full stack web developer.
Okay, talk more about the problem our app seeks to solve.
Okay, so there are about 197 countries in the world, and most of the time we aren't informed or maybe misinformed. And that usually leads to ignorance, preconceived notions, stereotypes, biases, racism, and disconnect. Dante, you want to let them know our solution?
Hello, the solution is Cover2Cover. Ask questions. If users find a story that interests them, they can start a discussion by asking questions. Discuss amongst other users by leaving comments or browsing other user questions. As the owner of the post, select and answer questions that you feel will add more insight to your story. And from that, we can learn from the types of questions being asked from users around the globe and other stories in the site. And now I'd like to introduce you to like to start the demo of our app.
Right. So when a user first visits our site, they're greeted with a couple of options. Here we can see two of the most noteworthy stories that were rated by most pages and most interest from other users that read it and wanted to ask questions. So if we want to actually explore the site a little bit more, we'll just click over here and see the other stories that are available to us throughout the entire site. Let's check out this first story about Neighborhood Kid. We can just hover over it and get a little brief intro into what's going on, just like the other stories. So we'll click on this one and we can see all the information here. So reading through this quick, I can see that this guy right here, he grew up in Ghana and got to see foreigners across the street from him having fun and enjoying. One of those foreigners actually introduced themselves and they had lots of fun. And eventually it led to him getting opportunities in America for different jobs and stuff like that. So I'm curious to see what else happened. He said somewhere that he was a really curious person who asked lots of questions. So I'm going to fill my information in here and send him a little message. All right, so I want to ask him, what made you ask so many questions as a kid? I'll submit that and wait for my response. In the meantime, the person who wrote this story is Group 6, and Joanne will show us what happens when you respond to those questions. I'll log in right now. Right, Joanne?
Once you're logged in, you can go down to a post, and let's say you click cultural shock, Neighborhood Kid.
I'll just go check out the story that was questioned just recently.
So you can click, if you want to see what questions were asked, you could click on this little icon and you could choose the question and respond to the question.
All right, I'll respond by saying something like, I was a very curious kid who wanted to know everything.
And if you want to see other questions, you could either go back and forth. And if you want to add a new post, Dante, you want to talk about that?
When users want to add a new post, they can click on this plus sign on their user page. Users are able to create a story using this form. First, they make a title for their story. Then they choose an image to be the face of their story. And from this drop-down menu here, if they choose to, they can select a question to kickstart their story. All right. The text field on the right is where users can type the content of the story. And after that is done, share it for the world to see.
So let's go back real quick to see if that user had their response answered. Go back and explore. As that user, I'm going to see if my response was answered. And yeah, it was. The person responded to me, and he's a very curious guy. Logging back in real quick, we can see that story we just added. Or not, but that's okay. And this is our app. So let's talk a little bit about technical milestones. So for us, Redux was an interesting challenge for us. We had an idea. Well, so basically, Redux was basically implementing a very simple idea, but it was very stressful to do so. We used it to keep track of user information and story data throughout all components of the app. The problem was that it required a lot of three-dimensional thinking, and it was pretty difficult to think about it while you're coding it. I also tried to implement a new database, MongoDB, instead of Postgres, but I realized that since the relational tables were really needed for our app, I couldn't go with the fancier looking database.
And something we really had to keep into consideration was the fact that rather than thinking about how we wanted the app to look, we constantly had to think about the user. And we also, for our backend, in order to upload files, we tried to use Malter, but then decided against it.
Right, and the overall question functionality for the app is just the overall logic that our team sat down and discussed, and where I'm happy with the outcome of it.
All right, for future implementations, John, can you speak more about the global pages?
Yeah. So we wanted to add a map, so the users are able to pin their locations and also see other pinned locations. And Dante, you want to talk a little bit about the video post?
I wanted the fully featured post that included video and audio posts, as users would feel more that some stories have more impact if they're either heard or seen.
Right, and I wanted to implement an infinite scrolling feature on the Explore page, so users can get only a portion of all the feed at a time, and then maybe scroll down a little bit further. So we'd like to open up for questions. Thank you for looking at our demo.
Is there any way for the user to get notified when somebody has answered their question or when they have received a question on their post?
At the moment now, there's no way for that to go about, because as a user going onto the website, you don't have to actually log on, but we did enter a little field that stores the information if the user puts their email in there. And hopefully in the future, we'll be able to create something that sends maybe a notification through that email. But right now, since there's no specific user signed in when they ask questions, we felt we'd left that implementation for a little bit later.
Awesome, thank you, good job.
No, thank you.
How do you store that information? Do you use a cookie, some local storage?
So with Redux, we're actually storing them in little variables, or the state actually. And as the state holds on to it, we can actually take that information and bring it to different parts of the website and bring it back up again. That's also difficult to do that. And we didn't use cookies, but we do have an option through Redux to keep track of the user that's currently signed in through that state.
So at some point when this is in wide use, you will have collected a lot of data, right? A lot of stories. Do you have any future plans for all that data?
So right now we're using Heroku in order to store it. But in the future, we're looking into other ways that we could store it. And most of our posts right now are in the backend. We're using SQLs. And then possibly in the future, we could look into other back-end ways to store information.
Right, it would probably look like purchasing more space on Heroku or finding a different web app to store our cloud information. Because right now we're limited to 10,000 tables. So if 1 million users were using our site, that would get filled up in the first hour.
No, I didn't mean in terms of size, right? In terms of the technology, I mean in that, you know, people, there's a lot of information people be revealing, right? So you can mine the data. Do you have any plans to do that?
Ah, yes. There was an idea of us kind to take the stories and use it as a way to like share those information with people who are curious about traveling around different places. If they were curious about a place, they can pull up a story and maybe try to see if they can experience the same things that user experienced. Joanne actually came up with the idea for global travel.
Okay.
Very cool idea. It seems like you can aggregate the stories and maybe publish little storybooks for people with different interests. This is really cool.
Thank you.